This is ICTV, and I'm your host, Mike Ingersoll, brought to you from the Inside Carolina studios in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. The Ask Mike question today revolves around the recent self-reported violations, the secondary violations to the NCAA regarding guys selling some pairs of their shoes. And the question is, Mike, I thought that with the downturn of the NCAA stuff, with clearing the air there, that we'd be out of the woods a little bit. But I can't believe how selfish some guys would be to sell their stuff and put us back in harm's way. What do I think, meaning me, Mike, what do I think the punishment should be outside of a mandated suspension? Well, that's a loaded question. And I understand the fans' frustration with all that, especially after we just got out of the woods a little bit with the NCAA after all that time, and multiple investigations and name getting dragged through the mud for all these years. And how could guys turn around and do something dumb like this again? And what I'll tell you is, we live in a world now with college football, Division I football primarily, where we have cost of living stipends, we have unlimited meals. The apparel deals are getting better. TV money has created an influx of money into schools, which they usually do, for the most part, trickle that down into the programs that are responsible for that TV viewership and that TV exposure. So there's an influx of money, there's an influx of resources, and players are starting to benefit from that. But at the end of the day, they're not living in a lap of luxury. Excuse me. They're not raking in tens of thousands of dollars and making ends meet sometimes and paying for meals. Getting some extra clothes here and there. It requires money. It requires some spending money that these guys just don't necessarily have. I beg all the fans to consider the backgrounds that a lot of your favorite players come from. They don't come from environments of means. They're not able to call home and get a few extra bucks if they want to buy a shirt, or if they need to buy a shirt. They need to buy new underwear. They need socks to wear around, or if they want to go to the bar and they want to buy some beers. They don't have any money for that for the most part. So it's all contextual. So how can guys be so selfish as to sell shoes? Well, I'm gonna tell you this. In reality, if I can get $1,000 for a pair of Jordans that I got from the team, because I know there's only 150 pairs that were made by Nike, I might sell those shoes too if I need $1,000. Because $1,000 in college would go a long way. Yeah, it's selfish, and yeah, it's got consequences. But the one thing I will remind everybody is that, listen, this was recently self-reported. This was self-reported not recently. It was self-reported back, from what I understand, in the beginning of the spring semester when all this started. So we're talking January time. It's just now hitting the news, so it's recently gotten an uptick in the news cycle. But it was reported back then too in the media. It just didn't get a whole lot of attention because this has obviously it's going to get clicks. It's going to get website traffic. When you throw UNC's name next to the four letters NCAA, it's going to get a lot of attention, and that's what you're seeing right now. Is the local media and the national media has caught on to it, and it's just a way to kind of pile on, especially after what a lot of people feel was an unjust result with the NCAA investigation, with Carolina not getting any penalties levied against it, at least not formally. Now, we all understand as a fan base, we understand as alumni, and we understand as employees and representatives of the school that there were consequences to that NCAA investigation, to both of them. It affected us. It affected the school financially. It affected it reputationally. It affected it in terms of recruiting, which is affecting the product on the field. It's affecting the product on the court. It's affecting the product on all fields for all athletes and all athletics. So there were consequences, just not those that were officially mandated by the NCAA. How would I punish the guys who sold their shoes? I wouldn't. Listen, the young guys that needed some money, they sold some shoes, they got caught. I'm sure they have been reprimanded internally, but the one thing is, are you going to take away the only thing that really matters to some of these guys, and that's football? Do we want to penalize that kid? Do we want to penalize his college career? Potentially a career afterwards if he's that good, depending on who it is. How egregious really is this action? Taking some shoes that the school gave you and selling them on the internet, and then some NBA player wearing them in a pregame walk into the locker room, and it being on television. That's how all of this got found out. It all began with a TV camera on a star NBA player walking into the locker room and Nike making a phone call to the school. That's how this happened. Again, how egregious is the crime here? It's really not high on the scale of bad things that could happen or poor decisions that could be made. It's a lapse in judgment. From what I understand, the guys had to pay back the money they got from them, from the shoes, and all Team Jordans have been put on hold right now, and they're going to be rationed out as the coaching staff and the athletic department feels fit or deems fit and appropriate. So, there have been internal remedies, there have been internal sanctions, there have been internal reprimands for these guys, and I promise you that whatever they've suffered from the coaching staff and whatever they've suffered from the university is sufficient. So I wouldn't punish them any more than they have, and please don't blow this out of proportion. It's really not the big deal that everyone's making it out to be. Don't believe the hype. Okay, there's a hype machine in the media around UNC and anything related to the NCAA. Don't buy into it. Okay, it's really not that big a deal. And at the end of the day, this is one of those things that's just going to kind of fall by the wayside, I promise. For Inside Carolina, I'm Mike Ingersoll. Have a good night.